Hey guys, it's Jenna. Welcome back to my channel today. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the new Huda Beauty in the Wild eyeshadow palettes. I picked up 3 of them, and based on Harvey's reaction, he is super excited as well, clearly, to talk about this. These are the palettes we're talking about today, and I don't think you guys need these. I hate to say it. So if you guys want to know my thoughts on these palettes and kind of the struggles I went through to get the looks I created with them, then just keep watching. Good boy. Thank you, honey. Sephora came out with these Huda Beauty in the Wild palettes just the other day, so I was able to go in store and pick these up to review for you guys. I did do a look with each one, so you'll be able to see kind of the struggles that are happening with all of these palettes. I do only have one other small mini in my collection, and I've used it so much that I actually dropped it one day, so I had to purchase a new one because I really didn't want to be without it. This is part of her Nude Obsessions collection. This is Nude Light, and this is the one I'm going to be referring to when I talk about the other 3 palettes here and the formulation compared to this one. These 3 palettes are available at Sephora, like I said, for 29 American dollars or 38 Canadian dollars, and they're available on Huda's website. Huda does have a 4th palette in this collection called Tiger, and I haven't seen it at Sephora yet, so I don't know if it's going to be a Huda Beauty exclusive for her website or if it's going to come to Sephora later, but these are the 3 that I was able to pick up today to test out for a first impression. So let's get on to look number 1. Let's talk about the first palette, which in my opinion is the strongest out of the 3. This is the In the Wild Python palette. This is really beautiful because you can see it has that really gorgeous shift with the image there. It has the same like scratchy like outer packaging that her other minis have had in the past. The python skin design you can see on the image there as it flashes in the light. Now, when you open this one up, this one truly reminds me sort of like a tropical palette, like really nice aquamarine colors. I absolutely visualize like mermaid vibes with this one. There's quite a distinction between shades here. There isn't any that look like even remotely close to each other, but yet they look cohesive together. So this is a palette that I was really excited to dive right in, and I did do one look with this one. So all over the lid, I actually went in with this matte right here. This is a really beautiful like greeny blue matte. And you can see here that even though it applied okay, there's actually one bit of my lid that just wouldn't build up with this pigment. I don't know if it speaks to the primer underneath. I actually primed my lid with the Pat McGrath concealer today, the Sublime concealer, set it with powder, and made sure it was fully dry. For some reason though, there's like one tiny little patch of my eyelid that just wouldn't build with this pigment. So it's sort of hard to build with this matte because I felt like you could very easily blend it away as well. So that was really interesting to me. It's just one little pesky piece of my eyelid. So I'm not sure if that speaks to the formula or if there's something weird with how my concealer set. But I will say that this matte first impression, it's okay. It's not the strongest matte that she's ever done in my opinion. Next, I wanted to try one of those beautiful shimmers, and this one right dead center, it looks so, so pretty. So I actually went all over the lid here with a fingertip application, and this was beautiful over top of that green. This to me was stunning. There was absolutely no fallout or anything like that. When I did pick up that matte with the brush, there's a little bit of kick up in the pan, but this one was super smooth. It has a really gorgeous like gold to green kind of shimmer. It's very much a mermaid shade. So I really, really liked how this shade looked over the lid over top of that matte. Next, I wanted to try another matte. This is actually the deep brown in this palette here, and I went in with a very small Wayne Goss brush just for detailing, went in on the outer corner of my lid with this one. Now this is one, in my opinion too, similar performance to that blue teal shade that I started with. I did find that it was very light. The opacity is about light to medium, so it's not going to give you a ton of pigment where you have to be careful that there's too much. I find that you do have to build these a little bit. Because it was detail work, I felt like, you know, if there's any patchiness within the shade, it's not going to be as easy to pick out because it's not the whole surface of the lid, but it did do a good job. It did its purpose, and I did find I was able to blend it out to make it look nice and blurred and faded, nothing too stark on the eye. I wanted to do a look, I don't know if you've ever seen like a mermaid tail that has like some green transitioning into blue. It's almost like a gradient effect. So I wanted to go in with another blue, and I actually picked up the blue on the top left corner here to kind of add between the detailed shade and the shimmer from all over the lid, and kind of add a little bit of some really cool effects with that, like something gradient like, something really cool, like a inspo from the mermaid tail basically. And it was really beautiful. I did find that it worked really well applied with the finger. It was fantastic. It does have enough pigment underneath it, so it actually is a very potent shimmer, nothing like a light wash or anything. It's just really, really nice to work with. So out of all of them, you guys, so far, the strongest first impression is this one. And I actually was very surprised because I'm drawn to a different color story, which we will get to in a second. This one to me is the most consistent across the board, the easiest one for me to work with my first impression, and not feel like I was just blending for days or trying to build up a pigment that wasn't building up. Next, I want to talk about Chameleon. Unfortunately, Chameleon is my least favorite in this collection. So very similar vibe to Python. It does have that really cool shifting image effect. You can see that there. And also the scratchy. I call it the scratchy. Hopefully it doesn't like make your ears curl or anything, but I don't know how to describe that finish. Let me know down below if you know what I'm talking about. The word is not coming to me, but it's like that same finish across the board with all of them. The same plastic packaging on the back here. I forgot to mention that all of these palettes actually are made in China. So I'm gonna quickly mention that now. They're made in China, and 24-month shelf life on all of them. Now this is a color story. I've seen a lot of corals, I've seen a lot of pinks from her, and that's okay. I mean, she's doing a totally different color story with this, with the really cool like blue purple in the bottom left corner. This is a really interesting shade. It actually translates quite red. I thought that maybe the little like blue part of it would make it shift a little bit, but it's certainly more of like a red shimmer. And this is the one that I think has like the most redundancy, where it's just like the shimmers tend to blend into each other a little bit. So compared to Python, this one has less versatility to me overall. Now starting my look with this one, I did pick up the coral. The coral is on the bottom here. You guys, when I tell you that it was so hard to build this one up, it was right above my crease line, sort of. So I have hooded eyes, and sometimes, you know, the product can skip a little bit if I'm not careful in between that spot. And that's what was happening here. Because it happened with that first matte, I was like, maybe it's the concealer. But then when I did try it on a dry lid, no concealer on it, no primer at all actually, it's still skipped a little bit. So it is definitely a patchy shade, worse off than the teal from Python. I then went in with this really cool like gradient shade. I wanted to see how it would look, and it sort of looks like a deep red. Reminds me of vibes from Natasha Denona's Sunrise palette. It didn't even apply very well with my fingertip. I used my fingertip with this, and even that was hard to apply. It just like wouldn't move. It would just stay there. And then I tried to go again and it wouldn't blend. So I had to do multiple layers picking up with my fingertip, and it was just really, really frustrating. Next, I wanted to deepen the look and try another matte out and see maybe this matte is better. Maybe. Like hopefully, right? This is the matte I picked up here. It's kind of like a plummy brown color. This is one that did okay, but you do have to build it up. It is a light opacity shade too, so that's fine. It just depends on your preference. Huda Beauty does tend to have more of a light to medium opacity when it comes to shades, just to kind of cater to a beginner. Totally fine by that. When it came to detailed work here, this one was just a little harder to blend as well. I noticed on the edge there that I had to work it a little bit harder than the shadow shade I used in Python. Wanted to do the same kind of effect that I did with the green eye, where I kind of put a blue like sparkle shade to kind of do a little gradient effect. So I wanted to go in with this gold. The gold in this Chameleon palette has that really cool scaling embossment. And this is actually a really strong shade. So out of all the shades I tried, the gold is the best one. It's very creamy. It does a great job of just like layering on the lid beautifully. It's not stiff. I mean, out of how many shades I used? 4. There's only one that was like great. The other ones were very much a struggle, and for that purpose, this palette out of the 3 gave me the most trouble, plus the color story isn't my favorite either out of the 3, so this one was definitely last place. Let's talk about the palette that's on my eyes now. This is the In the Wild Jaguar palette. Look at this one. This one is really cool. I find because it's so dark though, you can barely see the image switch compared to Python, for instance. Like Python, it just goes crazy. You can see how it's like Python skin, shift off. Python skin, shift off. I sort of see the Jaguar spots, but not as easily. So it's not one that's as easy to see, basically. Just kind of speaks to the fact that it's just like a darker image overall. On the inside, I really love the grungy look of this one. It sort of looks like Natasha Denona's Glam with a little bit of grunge added to it. For some reason, I was very surprised to see how excited I was about this one. So color story-wise, loved this one. Thought it was amazing. You know, performance-wise, not as crazy as Chameleon, but not as good as Python. For the look I have on my eyes right now, I went all over the lid to start with two mattes. I wanted to try the beige here, which basically looks like my little bit of my skin color, maybe a little lighter. And then I did the matte here just over top of it. Both of them have light to medium opacity. Both of them actually blend really well. So matte-wise, wasn't too bad. I actually likened those mattes to the mattes in Python. I thought they were fairly great. They do have a bit of a powderiness to them. You do need to build them as well, and they do have a teeny bit of a tendency to blend away, but nothing too crazy. Here's where it gets interesting. I wanted to go all over the lid with this guy. This is such a soft pigment in pan. This one applied, however, gave me quite a bit of trouble because I needed multiple layers for it to translate on the lid, which was very strange. I knew that it was a light, you know, opacity shimmer. 3-4 layers in and I'm finally like, is this actually going to ever show up on my lid? Then I went all over the lid with this shade, and this pan has the scale embossment in this palette. It only became evident on my lid that I actually had a strong shimmer presence when I combined the two shades together. When I kept it with this one down here, it just simply wasn't strong enough even when being built. So it's almost like you have to be okay with having a light shimmer that barely looks like a light wash of color over top of the matte. It didn't do very well for me. The reason why this look was saved, I'll be honest, was adding this top shimmer here. That kind of helped with the gradient effect. I did apply this with a fingertip, and you can see that it has such gorgeous shine because this shimmer is very, very strong. It's got like a really cool, like silvery blue, very interesting shift, and it really amplifies this look. I also did a little bit of edge work with this matte here, a little bit of a drier matte, a little bit of a patchy matte as well. So inconsistencies across the board with these palettes. There isn't one palette that's like this 100% is great. Obviously this is a first impression, but it's interesting how my thoughts are forming with these. Python being obviously the color story that, you know, typical Jena wouldn't grab, but yet consistency wise way stronger than the other ones. So Python is first. Jaguar is second. Those mattes are not as bad. There are some shimmers that are better than others in this palette. So this one is second. And for sure, Chameleon is third. So 50-50 on these. Do I like this look? Yes, but it did come with a trial of my patience and a lot of time to make sure I was layering these pigments properly. They're not as strong as some of the big palettes that I love. Mercury Retrograde, in the Nude one, they're fantastic. And she does change something when it comes to some of these minis because they're not all that consistent. The Nude Light is one of my favorites because it's just so easy to put a look together. Like I said, I had to buy a brand new one because when I dropped it, it was like a heartbreaking moment. But this is one, it's just a lot more consistent across the board. These In the Wild ones though, they surprised me, and I was surprised that I liked Python the best given that those are not colors I typically choose. Really hope this review was helpful for you. Do let me know all your thoughts down below. Don't forget to subscribe for more high-end and luxury makeup reviews. And until my next one, guys, take care and stay safe. Bye, guys.